Happy Monday, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well in all line position locations and calculation line settings. Very powerful when we come into higher frequency. It's amazing. I had a lot of people basically on live lines and trying to understand the conditions of their retro scales, setting position of frequency patterns and high calculation positions. See that? See that line signature line stream? Look, see the plasma? Look, plasma. See? You can tell it's plasma because it's over a crossing stream. Look. You see? You see the plasma line? See the electrical grid line? That's a plasma wall. You explain to me how it comes in like this, right? It's all through imagination locations, right? Channel streamline position operation of surface. See, indicates and travels locations. See? See it crosses patterns? Everything has a sound barrier. It correlates to set location to high setting and directions. So as of today, we're going to go through calculation modifications to the new ground lines, a holographic line setting. It's very complicated because the direct signals locations, father lines, a space line, the conditions of founders of all space position has to be all time lines all at once. And to get there, line interference has to be a computer operation stream, directing all lines of all computers in each second locations. Each second downloads all signal to share pattern line conditions of terabytes, megawatts, megajoules, calculation rhythm patterns, correlation line directions, calculation line position over pi, redirect signal locations, ground lines, operation surface, rhythm tones, correlation settings, operation line setting locations, proxy channel line interference, capillars over pi, direction of time sequence. It's all modified calculations to security parameters and parameter line center locations, settings, direct location of the computer operation surface, or any direct line center location operation to its calculation system. So all computers all at once simultaneously, constantly going online setting interference, getting you guys in platitude line interference into set locations to your settings. Try to understand how to use the set locations and how you see your cloud line settings. Everything is position of frequency lines, of energy lines, set locations, and levels. It's the levels of you have to recognize the communication, and this is understanding the conditions of where you are in your alter state. Okay, it's an alter state line. It's a streamline rotation in a subconscious line setting that stays in the subterranean. But the subterranean has to understand the water surface. For example, in set location never directions. Go through plasma line settings of signature patterns, redirect signal location of zero lines of operation locations. So this is what it looks like in set line and high positions, right? Now, we're going to go through new line rotation and calculation streamline. Positions of 2, 4, and 6 center calculation line centers. Okay, 2 inches, 4, and 6 inches lines of block line connection system, indirect signals, plasma line channel, line rotation, ground lines, operation surface, and set location and directions. So we channel line, streamlines, and set location high settings. Okay, so going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you guys are at 71 lines, set line interference, of 71 line interference of 7 locations. That's 7 zeros in set location of 4 lines in position of 3 lines in set location of settings. 3 over 4, 4 over 3. All right, so we take the 0 line in line rotation, 0 line in line rotation, and 0 line rotation in 3 set location directions. Now it gets complicated. Like I said, you have to understand how Father sets up his platitude line rotations to his surface locations, calculation lines. So it's in correlation system and involves a shape line calculation setting directions. So we get 1 line signal, lines of 0 and position locations. So we got 1 lines of 1 lines of 2, and position of 3, and positions of 4 line calculation graph line. Okay. Now you have to understand how this sets line position locations. Sun comes in line rotation, correlation line direction, and high calculation streamline and set locations of high setting. Okay. All right. So getting in that direct signal, you have to really understand how to use the holographic stream locations to its avatar line center. It's sectors over pi in position of track line, right? So it's connected to an energy hub that rotates its surface locations to its dimensional sail that sets lines of communication setting into a Hubble of a capsule of set location. Okay. So it's an inside cloud line, high position of track line. So it's very powerful. We set location in those directions, right? So that's what's inside a cloud line. Redirecting signals at dimension line sail, line rotation surface, the coordinate line interference. So we take the 4 lines, calculation line positions, track line communication lines of 3, and set location directions. Now that's lines of 7, 7 on top, 7 in middle, and 7 across signals, location of 3 lines. I say bracket location of 7, bracket location of 7, bracket location of 7, and set location of settings and directions, right? So we direct the 7 there, and set line condition of 7 there, set line condition of 7 there. 3 lines of 7 rotation, center line interference. So if you understand the inhibitor line, center line interference, we send location of bracket line surface location of 7. So that's line kinetic line height interference of 3 7 lines of dimensional lines of doors and set locations. Directing lines of 7 in center position of south line correlation setting directions. So we set the panel's communication lines as circle line rotation interference into the moon line of its capsule and set location directions. This opens all signal lines and calculation stream and set locations. Okay, it's very complicated, right? Done by equation. Okay. So there's 7 signature line panels, line interference, a capsule line, streamline, setting direct signals and set locations. All right, so in that line rotations, we go through a line graph line streams and 0 line rotation surface, allocate line stream locations. Now we change the line panels, rotation line position locations. Remember, father's trying to understand the correlations of where you are in direct location settings in the capsule communication. Now, directing the line setting is all about 1 lines of 4 and 4 line rotations. 144 line rotations along is a ground line and rotation surface of walking set line conditions. Very complicated when you look at locations. That's done by equation. So we'll keep that in signature line stream. Now we're going to come line interference in set location settings. Back in equation, time lock sequence location of this line settings, directing signals, all right? So we have to set up energy graph lines and streamline rotation. Now that's dimensions over pi, correlation line interference, and center calculation streamlines. Gets complicated, right? Because the thing lines at triangle line rotation is a circle line rotation surface and set locations. Okay, done by equation. All right, so the central line unit is set up. Then we come back to set lines and high calculation streamline and set location. Now we add the energy line circles, sending track lines of communication, position of platforms, center calculation of 2 lines of center. Okay, done by equation. Okay, so getting to that line rotations, we come into this division. The rotation surface of the center line, the calculation lines of 0 line operation, center line communication puts you guys in 71 lines of 0. So that's 4 lines of 0 lines and 3 set location setting in position of pyramid line, rotation surface, and set location of directions. Now, elixir lines in 1 line setting, track line calculations into an arrow of set location directions. Now, this comes in alpha line wave into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 location directions. Center line calculations, a graph line stream of sonar. All right, so we center line position location operation surface to a clock line change that changed direct location into the center line positions into another line position location of travel set locations. All right. So we come in line rotation interference. We expand the pyramid lines as streamlines and set location high setting and in directions. Okay, done by equation. All right. We're going to keep that set locations. So once we get into that line of signature panels, the position location graph lines. So we got box line rotation surface, center line directions. I wanted to show you the set lines of communication, how it comes in line setting. Okay, this is really interesting coming to this locations, right? Now it's really interesting, all levels, position of kaleidoscope location settings, directions, right? So it's interesting to look locations at positions, operation to its surface. It's really interesting to calculate position of block line rotation surface calculation settings. Directing signals, okay, 2 panels, line rotations into crossing signals and set location. Now, the cross the signals lines a high calculation streamline, directing signals and set location setting. So it offlines its surface and set location setting in directions in its position, okay? So we got 2 lines of 2 panels, rotation to its surface locations. Directing lines, so we go into box line channel and set location higher levels of calculation stream. Now that direct signal locations comes into the line centers of the block line surface. This overcrosses stream locations, directing signals going back in line division and rotation position locations. Now the indicating line of rotations comes into 0 lines. The sun line of operation surface comes in track communications to higher levels of travel positions of operation. Okay. This directs lines of zero line, operational location setting, and one line positions of one perimeter. Center calculation line interference. So we set the metrical ball line rotation and set calculation setting direct signals to its atom line and signature location. The signature line center lines its center line rotation and position locations into two tube line rotations into one calculation and one travel line setting and rotation surface and set locations. Directing line centers would come in position locations to its metric line stream. Medical ball line rotation interference and set location directions, setting signals and set locations. All right, so we open the signal panel. Now that panel lines at line interference of Stargate position of travel. Stargate line centers over cross stream lines, setting correlation line direct signals and set location setting and direct location to its position. Okay, operation line directions done by equation. All right. So it's going to get more difficult now because farthest got to set up the geometry line interference of his travel line conditions to ground lines. So we rotate the surface location setting directions. So we're going to keep that in signal. Coming back in location setting, directing signal locations of pi and set location of directions. All right. So we take the zero lines of one, center line position, track communications. So we got a zero line in position of two line rotation surface. So that's two over track and two over interference in set locations. Now, directing line centers lines of two line signature lines, we set up the zero line graph line strings and 1, 2, 2, 2, and the lines of 2, 2, 2 in position locations, 2 in center lines, and 2 operation and 2 positions. Calculation Merkaba, tesseract line setting, change direct signals and set locations of travels, rotation surface and set locations. All right, that's my equation. Okay, so I'm setting up oscillation channels. Now, an oscillation channel is a circle line rotation surface and set location to the center. Calculates line setting locations, settings of wave lines, ground lines, liner rotation, position of travel, communication, higher calculation settings, and direct signals, crossing panels of operation stream. So this directs line signal and line rotation. See the calculation off line? See? Well, the off line rotation sets position, location, higher setting. Father has to find the ground lines of rotation surface and operation and balance. Now, directing signal line interference crosses wave line signature lines alpha, delta, theta, and line rotation surfaces at locations, directing signals. Center lines, ground lines, operational lines of space and position of magnetic highway information line direct signals and set locations. Not by equation. Okay, signature lines and line interference. Ground lines. Okay, ground equals lines, center, line interference, travel communication settings. Triangulation lines, box line rotations, triangulation, line setting locations. So triangulation lines in position of percentage lines locations, lines of 100, line rotation, equal lines of pi, calculation stream. Okay? So the triangulation line sets, it comes into the flux capacitor communication setting. Here's the line center rotations. 1, position 2, and 3. Okay? So the calculations across the stream, line condition, flux capacitor line conditions. Downshift line cross stream line set location and 3 lines travel communication and directions. Okay, so this crosses line stream and set lines in half pi correlation stream. Direct signals, line setting, recognition of time sequence times pi, calculation line direction. All right, so line signature, line stream interference sets position locations into sun line of communication and moon line operation, position location, operation of setting. Directing signals. Now we take the pi indicator line interference at 3 set locations. Center lines of 71, 71, and 71. Set location setting. 7 line signatures. Setting direct signals into 1 line measure. Correlations of panels. 2 pillars and lines of lights. Space line and calculations into tractor beam. Space lines and high line interference and travel communication and direct signals. Crossing signal and set location setting and direct signal and set location of its position. Done by equation. All right. So understanding the settings is really understand how to set the connections to holographic lines of grounds, operation of locations, 1 ground into 1 platform. Okay. So we separate locations into directions, right? So we come across signature line settings. Alpha, delta, theta, and line conditions omega and set location. All right. All right. So we cross the streams. Okay, 12 line measure. It's always 12 line communication of those directions. Now in that line center, we have a 0 line ground line operation surface locations. All right. That centers line is communications. All right. So it comes up to, it's like a shelf. But the digital layer changes the platform communication of line settings, opens all position of signals, and set location of directions, right? So we cross line centers. So instead of circles, we use square lines, holographic line communication streamline settings. This direct line centers. Now we come into delta, and we come to theta, and then we come to gamma, and set location of directions. Setting signals lines as center line, center position location, and a center position. Now we set lines of communication as center communication in a rotation surface and set locations directions. Now in that line rotation, we set a magnetic highway information lines channel as center communication. Okay, double equation, right? So it's a delta line of rotation and 24 trillion lines of center lines and zero line rotations and 3 panels operational line position location alpha delta theta and gamma line interference sigma over pi calculation line settings. Okay, echo Zulu line center locations of Foxtrot communication. Double equation. All right, so we're going to keep that on signal. Coming back, line center line and positions and measure. Now the line centers or triangulation line centers is 1 lines and signal lines of 2. Okay, so we get in position location 2 line setting rotations, right? Traffic calculation lines and direct signals and set locations of panels, right? Panel calculation line directions, setting line conditions of its dimensional sail of set location of center and direct signal and set locations. Down by equation, all right? So we're going to keep that in line rotation, and they're going to come back to the graph line. Okay, so center calculation line and positions centers its line signatures. So we come to line interference of 0, 0, 0, 0, and 4 line setting, and 3 line centers of 0, 0, 0. So we got 4 lines at top, 3 lines at center, 2 position locations, 1 in ground, and 0 in operation and surface, and a dimensional line loop in location setting and high calculation line directions into a high calculation line direction in set location. See, it disappeared. I drew too fast and it just disappeared in set location setting directions in set locations. Now it's done by equation. Okay, so we're going to keep that in signal. Setting line conditions of new panels, setting position track lines. Okay, so we go in line communication 0 operation of surface. See, you have to understand how the 0 line brackets is center line communication. 0 lines of 4 lines, sets lines of 3, and set location of directions, right? So we take the 3 lines and 3 line center, Fibonacci rotation center, and location system. Directing lines at line connecting high interference, triangulation lines, center communication, and direct signal locations. All right, travel line settings into its dimensional sail and center line communication and operation surface and set location and setting directions. Double equation. All right, and so the triangulation line is set up. All right, so the force position locations operate the signals. Now we go back and set location to high setting, the directions. All right, so we set up another dimensional sail line rotation. See, he has to understand his dimensional sails, how fast they travel, and set location of 0 lines of operation of surface locations. Directing signals and correlations of panels sets lines of 0 line operation setting, 0 operation, 0 operating 3 line communication directions, center lines of line center location of center. Double equation. So we're going to keep that through track signal. Setting direct signals and set locations, we go through 0 operation line settings. So we did the 0 line rotations, correlation system, 1, 1, line center line conditions of 1, 1, equal locations of 1, 1, position locations, operation setting. Directing centers of pi and calculation of top line. Pi lines, center lines of force lines, equal location acceleration, and position locations of pi, and center calculation streamline. Okay, directing signals of 1, position of 2, position of 1, and position of 2 set locations. All right, travel lines, dimensional line interference, and position of dimensional sail and set location of directions. Now, directs the signals in 1, 2, 3 in set location settings, and 1, 2, 3 in set location direction settings, has a center line of a circle line rotation center and set location of directions. This comes into panels lines into ground line operation surface. Now, the core line interference comes into a Hubble. We change the line communication settings and directions. Okay, comes into higher lines of a higher connection of a capsule and line direct location of a system. Okay, so we get into the obstacle course in set location line directions into its cocoon of set location. Now, when you get in that line of interference, you come in a 0 line rotation interference. It sets out position location and higher calculation streamline into higher calculation line of space line division locations in its operation surface and its location to its system. Okay, done by equation. All right, so we center line the lines of graph lines and circle line rotations. Now the travel communication has to be in the center communications. The sets lines of triangulation and position locations of box line and rotation surface and set locations. All right? Okay, now that's done. Setting an equation location. All right? So we're going to keep that, and then we're going to come back to division line setting and rotation surface locations, directions, how to set up signals. Now, getting calculation lines, we set up the proxy lines of box line rotation line settings. Okay, this comes into higher calculations, higher measure. We'll like the ground lines and box surface location of 4 line centers of 3 and set location setting and direct signals. He's got to get a measure countability in lines of scale, line, and high interference and set locations. Okay, that my equation. All right, so it's all set. 4 lines of 3 box and 3 lines of 4 lines, center lines of calculation and triangulation. So this modifies the signal lines and set locations and position. Then we come into all set lines to the graph line high position location operation. So understanding the Hubble to its position line conditions is a circle line rotation setting. Okay, it's calculated and modified to a magnetic highway information line change direction signals and set locations. Now this high lines is high center interference. Comes into wavelengths. Wave lines, electrical lines of string line, a rotation surface in position of 4, in positions of 4, and line centers of E8 positions of line center of space, and E8 position location of time center of set locations and directions. Done my equation. All right, so complicated, right? I'm just showing you what's going on through all set location settings. It's going to get more complicated now with structure. To understand how to set position location of father through ground lines. Tomorrow we go into security and perimeters location settings. Remember, he's in the foundational location of setting on space now, but he has to be in the new ground lines. To his operation, to his alpha, delta, theta, beta, and omega, and everything down on a radiation line surface location and directions. Okay, so we're way through track location. Okay, connection line Geneva, lines of Gypsy, connection high settings, position of Chris, Johnny, and all. Trinity, Captain, Roman, Tipsy, all line centers, nice application system. Line directing, all levels, atmosphere location of change. It's amazing how we set application of setting interference. Well, I'm just showing you how powerful it is when it gets more complicated, guys. The drawings are going to get more complicated now because you're talking about space line now. It gets more easier because you understand the set lines and how it comes in its own engineer line rotation center. Okay, so we've got the Zener line rotation, Zener, not center, Zenter. Z line, inline conditions, all lines of center. Okay, Zenter. Center, it's a location. Z equals lines of center. Calculation lines, position, location, track lines, and communication, position of the ground line circle. Triangulation line setting, UFO line rotation surface, and location of scale lines, zero line, and zero line position operation. Okay? So we set lines of high interference, flux, fast communications. 3 lines and lines of 0 and 4 lines of set location system and position of 3 and position locations. So we got lines of 3 lines, rotation surface, 1 bracket, 1 surface. 3 lines indicate lines of pi, conditions of positive, and position of negative, and position of positive. So center calculation positive, and center locations. That's 2 lines in position locations and line interference. That's calculated in position location of 1 and 1 position line count in high center, 1 position of 1 calculation setting, equal line calculation of 2 in positions, 2 in perimeter, 2 in line calculation streamline, and center calculation line directions. So we had a line center of 0, that's 4 lines of 3, equal lines calculation of 7 over 5 over 12, center line rotation and downshift line condition to your pyramid line rotation, and 4 calculation settings in direct signals and set location. Okay, that my equation. Okay, so we're going to keep that in signature line settings, and the rotation surface and set location in the directions. Now, when you direct signals, you have to really understand how to set position on line calculations, circle line rotations. So we got circle line settings in position of 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 set locations. All right. So each one has a 0 line rotation, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and 0 line rotation set location system, right? So proxy line settings is compilers over pi. So we have the proxy line, 3 lines of pi. Pi equals lines of proxy. It's your location system here, guys. Proxy lines equal line condition system. That's equal line condition of 0, 1. Line condition of 0, 0, 1. And specification of 0, 0, 0, 1. And calculation of 0, 0, 0, 0. Position location of 1. So that's one line, 10 lines of one line. Position of 10. Position location of 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Equal lines of 2 in line center line interference, 12 line signature line position location calculations. Solar systems in one line setting and one calculations in one trillion line setting in block service. Block line rotations, block line rotations, block line rotations, and 3 set location of travel and set line calculations. Directing signal lines of 10 line settings. Now we go 3 calculation and triangulation line set location. Then we come into 3 triangulation lines at ground lines, 0 line operations, center line rotation, center locations, and into capillars. Set lines of calculation, 3 lines and rotations of 5, set locations and directions. That by equation. All right. So we've got proxy channel setup lines and a solid line rotation service now. Okay, so we wait on signals. Coming in at line to line interference, we come back line in atmosphere line, rotation center, calculation streamline and position. So we come in a Hubble, rotation line service, indirect signals, and set location system and directions. Now the directing signal line interference changes the lines of ground lines, rotation surface, and high calculation streamline and set locations. Now this directs line signature line patterns, sets line calculation lines into your stargates. This opens all signal location hard settings. Now the pyramid line rotation has an elixir. It sets line position location of the perimeters and parameters in 3 lines and locations into set location settings into calculations to its position. Line setting line rotation interference platitudes as line communications to a walking surface. Okay, done by equation. Okay, so that's set up locations. Now the crossing line streams, we're going to add that line interference into calculation. Anti-mantle line stream location of center. That directs signals on line center line operation line settings, a clock line rotation surface, and set location of directions. Done by equation. All right, so that's set up. So we got to go back and line rotations of proxy lines at capillars. Now the capillars have to be set up to set lines of high division. Computer operational line setting, that's pi calculation lines. So remember, it's 10 over lines of 2. Position locations lines of 5, lines of 7, 12 line signature lines. So tracking communication line direct location settings. So it's on the 24 o'clock line in position of 12 line solar systems. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we triangulation of 3 set locations. And we triangulation of 3 set locations and triangulation location of 3 set locations and directions. Directing signals and 3-point settings in direct location system, high calculation. That way equation. So we box the line rotation interference. It sets location high setting directions into her calculations. Modify high set location and high center interference in position line calculation setting in line rotations in directions. Now this sets up a cluster line rotation interference. Now the closest line channel sets box position location high calculation lines. As center operation lines of box line surface and set locations. Box lines of circle line rotation interference into proxy communications in all line setting. And then we add the circle line interference and set location triangulations in center position and set location setting, masculine and feminine, masculine and feminine, masculine and feminine. 3 line signature line interference, female, 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 female. 3 lines of calculation, male and female line calculation setting, 3, 3, 3. Set locations of 4, 4, 4. Set location of 2, 2, 2. Set location of 7, 7, 7, 7. Set location of 6, 6, 6, 6. 7 line, center line, and position location, 8, 8, 8, 8. Position location of 4 line signature lines of 9s. In position of 3 line conditions of 9s, equal line conditions of 0, 1, equal line conditions of 1, 1, and 1, 1 of new panel operation stream. In position location of 0 line, and communication setting, and direct signal as set locations. Done by equation. Boom. So, amazing how you set location in the system. All right. Smooth sailing from here, guys. It's a lot more fun, position attractions. All right, so when you get into that position, we set up a connections to a cavern. Now that cavern is a canal line interference, visitation cave. Sets line conditions, center line rotation, ground line operation, line conditions of 2 lines, center line calculation settings, calculation streamlines into pyramid lines, streaming a 4-line calculation streamline in set locations and directions. Walking surface line direct signals, crossing system and positional contractions. Operational line, setting in center line rotation to magnetic wave formation line, streaming set location of center. Now, you understand line connection. It's very powerful when you come into this location, all right? This is a vortex chamber. Now, this is a 70,000 line stream in set locations and high set location settings into a teleportation unit and set location of a model. Okay? Now, setting up line center line interference is one line rotations, flux path position locations, setting their directions. Okay, so you really have to understand how this all works into your calculation streamline in your test record data region location settings and directions. Now, directing panels, lines as their lines. So we colorize the position locations, operate the space line and set location of color. Space lines align and line rotation and position, track communications of center positions of operation. Done by equation. It's all set up. All right, so setting that line connection line system, we go through the center lines, circle line communications, all right? You have to learn how to basically get in position locations, higher levels of teleportation or vortex line calculation settings in higher models of communications, all right? Done by equation. So, yeah, I know it's getting more easier to understand lines, but the compute set lines and high calculation streamline is getting more difficult now because you're talking about communication in the line centers of father now. So as proxy channels are all set up position track lines. So we have a T reception line, box line rotations, and center line calculation stream. Okay. Center calculations in the triangulation line setting. Okay. Triangle lines, they travel line position location at 3 set locations and directions. All right. Now, when they direct line signal, the sun comes into higher calculation streamline in the opposite direct location system. Changes in the line centers alpha line, delta, theta, beta, omega, and communication setting in direct location of its pi calculation line directions. Now that directs signal locations. Now the moon line has to operate at several locations to a new line rotation center and position. Set calculation line directions sets calculation to its dimensional sail and set location setting into a new line of communication. Okay? Position attraction. Okay? Done by equation. So I'm keeping these line signature line sets because you have to understand we have to keep coming back to these frame lines and finish it in position attraction because the vibration line center is not there yet. Frequency lines changes the lines of center lines of 0 line. So you have 0 line in location of 9, lines of 3 waiting on signal, box line rotation of 3, set location of 3, set locations of 3. And this is how it sets location to a system of travel calculation line settings in position locations into 12 and set line division. Okay. So we set up blocks line channels, set locations of 4 and line conditions of 5 and line centers of 6 and line center location of 7. So 7 lines center line interference, 7 lines of 1 in position, calculation stream. Directing 1 and 1 in set location and directions. All right. Now, we take the 6 line setting and we set up the moon line rotation surface. It goes in the opposite location setting and kaleidoscope location of 3 set location to measure in set locations and directions. Now, directing signals as lines of 0 line, lines of 0 line rotation surface and correlation setting in direct signal in set locations. Okay, so again, we channel this line center and we come to higher calculations at positions. Looks like a beneficent location of binoculars. Center lines of communication and projections goes through infinity 8. The infinity 8 rotates its surface. Father's got to get set up location setting direct signals to lights and travel location line center location of its moon setting and travel communication in its direct location system of high setting. Now, it's understood in the 3 panels, 3 line signatures in position of 4 and position of 5, 6, and 7. So it's got calculation of 1 lines, 1 equals lines of 0, and connection line interference. So that's positive or negative, line center like in high setting, positive or line interference, and positive or no line calculation setting. Because he doesn't live in negative lines. He only lives in positive and negative. So set line communication line into direct line center line interference, 7 calculation center line directions at 3, 3, 3, calculation center line position, operation of service. Done by equation. So graphing line signature line panels is a block service. Very important to understand locations and directions. Panels communication. Okay. Alligate lines of stargate lines settings, stream location settings and directions. This opens all line signatures, calculates and travel lines and high send location of center, and direct signal set locations. All right. So center line position of center position location of 3 set locations. Center lines of 0 line and position location of 6 in center. Moon line crosses streamlines and high interference of 0 grabbing line rotations into 2 calculation lines of its added line rotation surface and 5 calculation streamlines and signature patterns. Okay, done by equation. All right, so I'm just setting up signature line settings. So we all have to come back to these line signature lines. We'll go into the vortex chamber in a 70,000 line unit. Here's the location of travel. Models of calculation line directions. So we correlate the panels, setting line streams, line graph, line set locations into 12 sets. Crossing line calculation of film strip locations and its direct location at its pyramid setting. That my equation. So we got the pyramid line rotation, the ground lines operation surface. The correlation of lines of 0 lines and 1, 1 equal to lines of 1, 1. Correlation system of space-time line condition line settings at E, line interference, E calculation line directions at E calculation position operation, its center calculation to your pyramid activation line to its E line setting, E calculations to its E line rotation, into its flash drive to its E calculation, into shift line, lock line, high interference traffic communications, position of 3 panels and 3 cycle line interference and calculation of line settings at 70,000 line units and set location high division location of center operation. Done by equation. It's all done. All right, so frame line signatures. We can take that out of equation now. Directing panels, operation to 1 line position, operation of service lines. So we bracket location centers. 2 bracket line centers. So we got 1 hanger line rotations, 1 hanger line rotations, 1 hanger line rotations, 1 hanger line rotations, and 1 hanger line rotations. So we got to calculate some hangers. You got to calculate line interference. So we set up block line channels in direct signal. So that's 2 lines in the line to position location security, because that's where we're coming into line interference. Center calculations 1 lines, cross and signal, cross and signal, cross and signal, cross and signal into locations. Okay. Now it gets tricky now, because the panel line rotation surface comes bigger and bigger into the location of its higher set calculation setting and directions. Okay? Directing door lines and high interference is 3 set location dimensions of Hall calculations. Skyline line rotation interference and set location to directions rotation. Now it sets lines calculation of lines, travel calculation of 1 box, set calculation of 0 lines operation surface and set location to directions. Directing signal lines as 0 line, center line communications opens up dimensional lines of travel and set location to directions. Directing line centers and lines of 0, we take the 0 line calculations into block service location of center position operation. Directing line setting, okay, come into position locations into your pyramid line rotation and calculation to a system. Okay. Coming at data line streamline and blocks line service, optical line interference into technical system, position of 4 line settings into travel calculation of 6, 8, 10, and lines in location of 12. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 line signatures, ground lines, operation stream locations, and routers and router line interference, and Wi-Fi calculation streamline, direct signals, and set location setting, and high calculation line directions, and line calculation setting, and direct signal. Done by equation. All right. It's getting more complicated, isn't it? How to set up locations and ground lines. Wow. So just imagine all that information has to come out every single day. So I just show you what it is, the position of traction line. Right? The traction location of the system. Position lines its directions. Truly stand the line setting. It's very powerful when you come to applications. Isn't it amazing? They come in that position locations. All right, great to see everybody. Just going in position locations, track communication settings here. All right, so this is how you set position of ground lines, new operation service location of space. But you have to stand the data lines in the Army of Universe location setting and directions, and then it disappears. Yeah, it travel line center locations. So that's location system. Change position line settings, directing signals, turning position locations, and there we go. Done by equation. I circulate line interference. Now it's 3 line position of perimeter. Calculation lines, position locations getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Right? All right, so center position locations, change position line settings, directing signals, and line connecting high interference and location setting of full circle line rotation interference of clock line setting directions. Directing signals, crossing position. Directing signals and position locations, center line connections. Done. All right. So I rotate the service lines in high calculation setting. All right, so that's done. Keep that position line setting directions. Come back in location center. Bracket interference. Okay, bracket line settings and 2 high position location operation in the location center. 2 out of line rotations, 2 point settings, right? So that's 1 position, 1 perimeter. Okay. So remember, this is complicated stuff because you're talking about father line setting now and travel communication. You just got to get a set location of center line interference and travel communication and direct signals and set locations. It gets complicated because it's all lines of high calculation settings on point system locations of directions. So center lines and line rotation, center lines, operation surface location of center. Center calculation lines, up line rotations, waving cycles, high set location of center line, position attraction. Okay, now connect line interference is north line, east line, and west line, and south line recognizes communication center line in its travel and position location higher lines, a high calculation stream. Done by question. All right, so he set up location to his systems now. Through his brackets and calculation line, send in 0 line operation surface in his alpha tone. Correlation ground lines has to be in a certain line measure, center line position locations. Now this puts it higher line setting in direct signal and set locations high setting directions. All right, done by equation. Okay. Okay. So, when you understand settings and directions, you understand how to put the letters, numbers, shapes together through a map sequence. So maps line. Map equals lines. Okay, lines. Communication. Lines of proxy, lines of box, lines of triangulations, lines of your pyramid line, division location of 4 set location of center. Signal up, right through line signature. Maps equation, lines of center, operation surface, travel line centers, operation surface, travel line center location. Directing lines of set locations, operation surface, clock lines. Center lines is communication. Bullseye, triangulation of 3 set line connections. And all settings in position locations, operation surface, and set location of directions, center operation. Okay? Done by equation. Now his maps are set up. Only ground signature. So we're going to take that out of the equation, try with that, settings. It's a lot to be set up, guys. Okay, center lines are 0, 0, 0, 3 lines of line position locations, all levels. So there's 4 line signatures and line conditions of 1, 2, and 3 set line conditionalized setting directions. All right. So that's where it comes into 1 line in positional levels, travel communication and direct signals, 2 panels line, streamline rotation, and direct location system. Okay, it's traveling too fast. So we rotate the surface and we set a clock line and center line going this way. And directions going the opposite way direct location system. It's got to go the operating line center to yin and yang of process communication. Directing lines is center line operation line directions. It's understand its triangulation line sets of its dimensional sail. It's trying to find its dimensional sail balance and correlation directions. All right. So as a direct line center, this comes in line interference into Merkaba, a new set location setting. So it comes in a tunnel defense line stream, center calculation, and position magnetic highway information line setting and center communication. Okay, done by equation. All right. So how to set up a circle line rotation surface is really understand how to use all calculation modification to a system. Clock line channels. All right. So he's working line, center line, center lines of pi, center lines of pi, positions of levels. So we got to track communications, 9 lines, center lines of 0, 0 to non-line rotation, 0 lines of 9, line condition lines of 3, 3 lines, center lines of 3 location setting and position attraction. So he knows these 9 line centers of 0, lines of square, and line condition system of a triangle, and position location of box, and position location of circle, and set location of triangle. Triangle sets lines of center, box lines of center communication of system. Travel line, center line interference, and set location of travel, set location of line directions, into 0 lines, into 9 lines, 8 lines of 3, line conditions of 12, and set location of 24, 48, 72, and 144. Clock and line, center line interference, and high calculation setting, into 0 line operation, and set location setting to all 7 positions, and all lines of new operation ground lines into a timestamp, setting correlation line interference and traffic communication setting and operation surface and set locations. Done by equation. It's all set up. Timestamp proceeds. Okay, so 0 lines and 9 lines is set up locations at 24, 48, 72, and 144. See, the difference is you understand the communication comes on signature line streams. So we'll take that out of the equation. That's now in surface line settings. So we've got 0 lines of clock, 0 lines of travel, 0 lines of grounds, and 0 lines of calculation. Okay? So 0 of center, 0 line, 0 calculation, and 0 balance. So we block the surface location lines only in a triangulation line set. Okay? Center position locations comes in 4 lines. So it sets lines of 4 lines, 4 lines, 4 lines, and 4 lines of set location setting. This directs signal location settings and high interference into triangulation of 3 sets in the center communication. See? Triangulation of 3. So we set locations of 4, it's set locations of 4 line settings, right? 4 lines at line setting, 4 lines of 3, calculation of 7 in the center position. Now we understand the operation of ground lines, operation of surface location settings into 2 panels, 2 set location setting directions of 3 lines, 3 lines, and 3 lines of set locations. 3 lines and 3 lines and 3 lines of set locations, 3 lines and 3 lines of set locations, and 3 lines and 3 lines and 3 lines of locations. Triangulation of 4 lines into a new Markov set location directions. Directing line, center line, signature lines of 0 line, position of panel line, operation surface line, correlations to magnetic line, and set location high setting directions. That my equation, all right? So his metric scales now is a geometric line and interference of 3, 3 in all calculation north, through south, and east. So he's now in 0 lines of ground lines, operation of service. Now we get to change the timestamp lines at all calculation line directions, intercept center calculation lines. Center line interference, set line condition of scales, and lines of 2 set location and directions. There's the scale and set location and directions, right? Calculation line directions. There's the intelligent location center. Multipass. It's all done. So, know exactly what I'm doing is I'll calculate and modify how to center ground the line setting and interference location of traction. Okay. But it's amazing how you set holographic line set locations of 4 lines of 3 and 3 lines of set location settings in north, south, and east. Heart, mind, and soul. All in center calculations and line connection high interference of 111, 112, 113, and 114. He is in the ground lines of his own operation locations in summer, spring, winter, and fall. All set up. Now, this is all about understanding how to set line positions. Now he's got to get in his crop circles or clock lines now. Right? Travel calculation of the UFO line, rotations of 2 settings. Calculations coming out of line in position locations, high center interference, in position of the moon, and operation location is coming line, center location of the sun, and direct signals. Setting line, center line interference, travel calculation, travel calculations, travel calculation line, and line rotation of 3 set location travels. Now, line center line is the Earth, sets line communications, center directions, Earth perception lines, and stream location settings. Okay? The rotation service location comes in ground lines, operation line and direct signals, crossings, platforms, and set location of center lines, sets all communications to Skynet lines and in high travel communications. Done by equation. Okay. How are we doing through rotation spins? All right. Your child is big on this online. Yeah. Chris Lyon, wrong. But I'm just showing you how powerful the connection of your engineer line centers the architect location setting it becomes in all set location directions. It's very powerful when you come into that positions. Because it's all connected to settings interference. Right? You have to understand that the math sequence, the math pi, line, center line interference, the travel communication is the direct location system, right? You understand its dimensional sales, understand its ground lines, operation locations. So, okay, so we come to platforms. Okay, so we come to 1, We come in position locations in position of 2. Now, high center locations comes in higher calculation of digital layer line settings. Okay. Center calculation of lines of one line rotation surface. It's one lines of 0, line 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, equal line conditions of pi. Triangulations of pi and line centers of box. Okay, it's also location directions. It's complicated, guys. I gotta do a Fibonacci line, swirl lines, high calculation percentage, indirect signal set locations. Now, walking line settings and high line rotation interference is all about center lines of communication. So it's walking steps lines, the step lines, calculation lines, the graph lines, digital lines of box line rotations and positions, operation server location, high center interference, and traffic communications. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line center location of 7, 7 and center rotation. All right. Now we outline the cast line, streamline set location of ground lines, operation location of steps, and set location of directions. Okay. All right. But I'm just showing you how it's set up location of line center interference. So if you look really, really close, you can actually see the new pyramid line rotation surface. Okay. Center calculation line settings, sets directions, and set location. So this is where we come into line positions, film project locations, and all levels. We got 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 location directions. Okay. Now we cross the signal line interference. That's 7 over line and 7 over pi. We redirect the signals at set location to a new ground lines of 4, 5, 6, and 7 location of directions. Okay. Now this directs line signal line interference. So it sets up an energy hub across the stream at set location of center. So the position location of realms is set location of directions. Higher calculation, higher calculation, higher calculation, setting directions, locations. Right? It's all set up. All right. So you have to understand how to set up a film project location aerodynamic line interference, the cryogenetic line rotation interference, a traffic communication system, travel line position over pi, redirect line centers of 7, 7 location high interference, traffic communication, image line setting, and direct signals. Say calculation line interference. So it's like walking up the steps communication to its dimensional line rotation. All through calculation settings of film projection. Now, position line track line is position locations when it comes in signals. Okay, new dimensional sail, right? Center lines of 0 line operation. We correlate line interference and traffic communication to center positions. Okay. Now, directing lines of setting, we're going to coloration line change. Change position, change position, change position, change position. 1, 2, 3, 4 line setting. Okay. So we go through the location grid and set location of center. Okay. Very powerful. So it changes the perimeters of perimeter line, security line, defense location, and center position. The operation lines crosses lines and line line and line rotations into 2 panels of operation location of center position location operation settings. That's my question. All right. Okay, so we cross the line graphs and 4 set location directions. Okay. So the center line communication line settings sets lines of 0 line operation. We center line its communication of center position. Okay. Now that rotates its surface into new triangulation lines of a new test locations operation. Okay. This opens up signals to high calculation line setting, a higher position location of GOD. The architect of its own design comes in all calculation setting. That big question. So I'll set up. And so, you have to really understand how to use the connections to your lines of 0s, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? That's all foundation graph lines, your DNA line rotation, interference, and traffic communication, and work about test rectangular region. So setting that direction, so that travels line setting. I take that in the equation, disappears in location setting. Okay, so setting a bracket line center interference. Now we got to set up locations in line interference. So we got a box line channel and line center location triangulation line setting. So the triangulation, having a relationship line condition to the box line, have a relation location of triangulation, have a relation location of 0, have a relational star system line setting, have a relation location of 3 panels, calculation, have a relation line conditions to its UFO line rotation, scan line center, line rotation center, calculation stream. That's my equation. So it has to get identification lines of map line sequence location of box lines, rotation, triangulation lines of circles, and star system line settings. So okay, they modify. So we can have triangulation, come into triangulation, line center line interference triangulation, and position location triangulations. All set location triangulation and line interference, all calculate and modify to position of intelligence. All right. See the eye line setting? See the nose location? Everything is position of communication of interference line intelligence locations. All right. All right. So box frequency, we travel that line setting out of equation. All right. So getting that line interference, we come into zero lines. Now the zero line rotations, it's really interesting location setting because this is how it's set up. We start line calculations of 1, line conditions of 2, in position of 3, and position of 4 set locations, right? And then we go into 1, and then we go into 2, and then we go into 3, okay? Very complicated. So we got a clock lines of 4 in line direct location in position of solar lines, center line of the communication center position. Now the 1 line center lines is operation surface and set location of travel in the sun communication setting. Directing signals of 2 lines and perimeter line rotation to 1 signature line stream location of center. Center lines of 0 line, operation of 1 line, equal lines of 1 line, and 1 line and 1 line, rocket line interference of 2 4 panels, line rotation of center communication, and travel communication line direction, settings, and set location. That my question, right? So 0 line out of operation of perimeters and parameters are waiting on signal for tomorrow line. We set lines of communication of 0 lines on operation surface location of ground lines, operational line setting to center communications. All right, that my question. Very complicated. So he's got a flux capacitor. You can see the flux capacitor 4/3 lines, right? But you understand why it's in direct locations and settings of 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, and 3. So in that line interference, we're going to keep that in signal, and we're going to center its communication of clock lines as 0 line operation surface. This puts position location to its set lines and calculations. 0 lines operation clock line rotation. All right. 0 lines connections operation clock line setting. 0 line operation cycle line calculation setting. Directions. All right. Come into position locations to its capsule calculation. All right. Now, getting that line center as we go into 2 panels, operation travel lines in a 45-degree angle location setting directions. Now, directing line position is the 0 lines of calculations. Center position locations, center position locations, center line position locations. All right, 3 line settings. Now, the rotation line interference comes into flux capacitor. Okay, and acceleration at top line center locations. Right? That center line is its calculation of its diamond line and set location settings. This is where we take the 9 lines, and 9 lines, and position of 9 lines, and its location of 4 in the line center locations. Line condition line centers of 9, 9, 9, and position of 3 set locations. All right. So the correlations in all calculation of line setting. Connection high interference of founders of space is now in a 4-digit frame line of 9 and a 3-digit frame lines of 3 and set locations of 9. It sets lines as position of 7 in the center lines in the atom rotation. Center calculation of 2 panels, operational line set location of directions. Now, directing line setting is extremely important. We got a 0 line graph line, set location of 12 line, crosses signals and set locations and directions. So we're crossing line signature line streams, line center line interference, and 3 set locations and 3 cyclones. Calculation line interference of atmosphere location of change positions. That make way, right? Now it's all set up. So we keep that in signature line settings, and we come back in this location line setting. All right. So we spot the channels. Now, spotting channel line interference, we position a vortex line centers of 1/3, and we cross over lines of 3/2, which puts 5 in the center location setting, directing signals. That comes into the line conditions of a UFO line rotation surface, scan the line settings, and the new line setting into operation surface to new crop circle locations. Now, down by equation, right? So you can vortex streamlines and set location line settings, 4/3, 3/5, 5/7, 7/12. But you can basically time jump, time leap. We'll get into that lines of vortex line set location of streamline. But the new metric scale line and positional clock line and operation surface is now set up calculation line direction settings into all calculations to its position. Okay. How's everybody doing so far? All codes released and diamond connection to us, finding us. We have to be available to be open heart line setting to grand. Yep. I know, but that's exactly what it is. It's all calculated modified change. See, it's very powerful what it is, possess location. Do you see what I mean by design line consist of struct locations? Connecting lines and location to founders of space. It's amazing how to set locations and directions. It's incredible when you start seeing these through all calculation modification system. It's all modified. It's all divided. It's all in balance of yin and yang. All right, so we plot the line centers, line setting, and center communications, right? So we have the zero line operation, we have the center communication settings, and we have a connections to its energy line stream, calculations to its position. Now, this gets interesting because the platforms have to be in set lines of communication and ground lines, operation of surface. All right, so it gets complicated because now we're going to triangulation reset lines in position, location, high setting. Okay. Now this directs the center line to 0. It rotates its 0 lines in position location of 0 lines in position location of 0 lines in a 4-box location setting in direct signal. Okay. Now the travel lines gets tricky because the set lines of communication sets lines in one line strip. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 locations. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 locations. Directing signals crossing streams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Crossing line settings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now it's all set up the graph line. That's done by equation. We can take that out of track line. All right, so getting that setting interference, the graph line streamline conditions is its anagram. Now it's an anagram line, box line rotations, and line calculating. Now we got a 0 line position, right? So that's 2-dimensional door lines and 0 operation. Travels lines into all calculation stream. Center position locations operation line sending direct signals into that location system of intelligence. Okay? The center line position of the box line rotates the line position location of traction. Setting direct signals in set location high center interference of 0 line calculation to center lines of 2-box location settings. Directing line centers into 1 line setting into new line operation surface and the new operation correlation panel. Done by equation. All right, so we take that out of equation settings. All right, so like I said, there's a lot to be understood, to be understand, and how things calculate and modify in set position of tractions. So we got this inner line. Okay, this is called Zen. Zen. Z-E-N. Okay, Zen equals center. Center lines a center. Yin yang, process calculation line. Position location 6/9 in set location setting. Directing circle line rotation surface. Line position location lines of energy hub rotation surface. Directing lines of center line calculation setting and directions. Center calculations, center calculations, center calculations, center calculations, and 4 set location of directions. Multi-pass and done. Okay, it's all set. Center grounds and line center line interference, 4 lines of hubs, 3 lines of 7, and set location directions. Okay. So we had to get the ground line, the operation surface, the set position of tractions. It's amazing how you come into all calculations to an energy hub to a position of hologram line setting. Okay, we're going to keep that equation, and the line position locations, we're going to come into this line rotation center. Okay. Okay, so setting up line center location heat signature line streams. 2 lines and 3, 3 lines and 4, 4 lines and 5, 5 lines and 6. So it's like a sprinkler line setting location of directions. Now this sets line communications like a donut in set location of directions. All right. So we cross the streams 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 locations, and we direct the signals in the opposite location setting and all line position location system and travel calculation line directions in high interference and position locations to center line connection high system and align position locations to its set system. So the correlation lines of founders of space now has its own tree formation. It's all set up. Mother has Earth, so does Father. It's all set up. That's how it's done. So in that position location, to truly understand how to use communication with settings. Okay, it's all operation and certification of a system. right? Founders of space now has a new position of tree formation of life, right? Now we set the frame lines. There's the frame line. There's the zero lines. There's the branch line communications into metric lines, streamlines into set location settings and nano lines. Second line, position of travel calculation to its cloud line, a height scenario calculation streamline, and a rotation system. Done by equation. We are done. See? All that to get to a tree formation location settings. Now he's in ground lines of space. See? How to set these things up is all provisional location of center. All through calculation line and errors, location position. All right. But it's amazing how he set a location to his own set location settings. Okay. So how's everybody doing? Whoop, whoop. Skateboarding, yeah. But I'm just showing, yeah, exactly. Yes, the tree of life. Yes, exactly. But it's amazing when it comes in this locations, how that's set up. This is setting up the tree. Okay. So it's really understand how to use the set and position location and settings of center and operation of set locations. It's really interesting when you get into formulas, equations to higher set location. Okay. Into that. And into this to finish location. Woo! All timeline sequence all at once. The cloud line setting, line rotation. Okay. I know. You see the codes flowing. Whoa. All right. 5-10 minutes. See you guys later. Adios.